And the first thing is that we need to have a secured region. So we have to fight extremism and terrorism together. And this is one of the agenda items we discussed. And in this regard, the federal government of Somalia and its national defense force has to be strengthened. And that calls a strong federal government with, the chief commander as the president leading the whole security issues in Somalia. So I think the sole responsibility is that of the federal government of Somalia, but we, the regional countries, can support this initiative. So in this regard, Ethiopia is keen to work very closely with the federal government of Somalia in fighting terrorism and extremism, and specifically Al-Shabaab and its stooges. We also discussed on cooperation in other security sectors, because this is one people in two countries, so we need to secure our people. And we work very hard together to have security both in Ethiopia and mainly in Somalia at this time, but the entire Horn of Africa region and our continent. So I think this is one of the areas we discussed and agreed upon. The second issue is the whole problem is complicated because there is poverty. So we have to fight poverty with our tooth and nail. In this regard, we wanted to cooperate on areas like education, basically economic integration and economic development, and having a free flow of people and transport of people and goods and services between our two countries. So we decided that we will have transportation mechanisms that help our people, integrate much more by free flow of people between our two countries. And we will continue on with air transport as well, that these transportation mechanisms are expedited between our two countries. That integrates investment and trade between our two countries. And Ethiopians should invest in Somalia as well as Somalis invest in Ethiopia, and our respective sectors will work together to see that this becomes a reality. I think this is the area we discussed on our economic integration. Beyond Ethiopia and Somalia, we also discussed economic community of the Horn of Africa, where we, the same people, should have more close economic integration. I think this is one of the areas we discussed. Beyond that, there is humanitarian issue that has to be addressed. And not only between ourselves, but the international community has to engage in humanitarian aspect in Somalia at this time, even though both Ethiopia and Somalia are very much affected by the current drought. I think Ethiopia is in a better position to handle this problem, but Somalia needs huge support. So we agreed to call upon the international community to support the humanitarian catastrophe in Somalia. But this is a temporary problem, but we need to have a food security both in our two countries. So Somalia and its people has huge potential that can be harnessed both in agriculture and livestock and water development. So we agreed to cooperate for lasting food security programs that can be emulated from Ethiopia to Somalia. And we agreed that expertise support can be given from Ethiopia to Somalia until they come up with a strong national system in Somalia. So I think that for now, the humanitarian issue has to be addressed as quickly as possible. Besides, I think a new partnership agreement recognizing the federal system of Somalia needs a strong federal government in Somalia, and also regional states which has got constitutional rights that can be worked out. But this strong Somali federal government means handling its security issues properly and strongly, and coordinating whatever happens in the country. The sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia is very important, and that has to be observed. So I think this is one of the areas that builds trust amongst countries, and specifically now for Ethiopia and Somalia. So respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity is one of the pillars for our relationship. And in this regard, Ethiopia is ready to work on the establishment of a strong national defense force in Somalia. Whatever the Somali federal government asks us, we are ready to cooperate. But the sole responsibility of securing the country is that of the federal government of Somalia. So that has to be underlined in a proper way. And again, the diplomacy and foreign policy is led by the federal government of Somalia, and Ethiopia is ready to work directly and in a direct line with the federal government of Somalia. So I think these are the main issues that we have discussed, and any further issues can be elaborated by the President. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And it's a really great pleasure for me to be here today. And thank you for inviting me and my delegation to this state visit so soon after I was elected. So I wanted to thank you again for that. Yes, we discussed many issues, including what the Prime Minister has said, that the Ethiopian government will deal directly to the federal government of Somalia in the area of security, because we're already working on to bring peace and stability in Somalia by fighting against terrorism and Al-Shabaab, who associate with Al-Qaeda. So we have that history, and we have done a great job, and we will continue to strengthen that relationship. Also, we discussed that the foreign policy is also, that's the role of the federal government, according to our constitution, meaning that the Prime Minister and I will work together very closely. His government and my government will have direct line to communicate in any issues that pertaining to our foreign policy. Thirdly, the monetary system also lie on the federal government, which definitely the federal government is in control when it comes for monetary system of the country, as well as immigrations. There is a lot of movement between borders, and some of those people may be Al-Shabaab or terrorist organizations. We will definitely communicate and collaborate the immigration issues. So after all, this is a new day and new era for these two great countries to work together to bring peace and stability in the region. Also, we discuss about how we can fight poverty and improve the quality of life of our people. And to do that, definitely we have to increase the trade activities between the two countries, and also to develop livestock, agriculture, and other areas we can work together. This has been a fruitful discussion and great meeting, and definitely our people will benefit if we work together very closely, and we are ready to do so in the near future. And again, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your open and hospitality for me and my delegation. Thank you again. And their aim is to establish a base or safe haven in which they can organize themselves and launch attack from Somalia to other countries, including our neighboring countries. We have we have enough support from our neighboring countries, including Kenya and Ethiopia, as well as other troop contributory countries called AMISOM. They have been working with the government of Somalia side by side and died on low cost to bring peace and stability in Somalia. And we really appreciate all their sacrifices they gave to Somalia, and their sacrifice will not go in vain. My government has a very extensive and comprehensive strategy to defeat Al-Shabaab in 2 years. Of course, with the support of our neighboring countries, AMISOM, as well as international community, because Al-Shabaab is not only a threat to Somalia, but also throughout the world. They only use in Somalia a base, but their intention and their strategy is to go beyond the borders of Somalia. That's why we have to collaborate and work together to defeat them, because they are a disease. They are not interested in for humanity and any type of development. So it's our best interest that Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, and all our neighboring countries to come together and fight this menace, because this is a threat. It's not only a threat to Somalia, but also other countries as well.
I think if I got the question right, it is about regional contribution of Ethiopia, peace and stability. And I think Ethiopia's contribution is well known globally. We are contributing to peace in Somalia. The Somali people know, the government of Somalia, respective governments of Somalia know it. And it's, I think, a huge contribution, a contribution by blood, a contribution by sacrifice. It's just not simple material contribution. So we have been contributing for peace and the stability of our region, not only in Somalia, but also in other neighboring countries and the continent, including South Sudan. Our peacekeeping forces are working very hard in a very disciplined manner to discharge the responsibilities. They are people-centered, and therefore people like them because they are very much integrating with the people of the country where they serve. So I think this is a well-known global record for Ethiopia. So our contribution is huge, but we still need to contribute more because we want to see peace and stability prevail in the whole continent and our Horn of Africa, which everybody knows is a very troubled region. So I think this is where we are, and I'm sure, as the President said, sometimes this thing is misunderstood by some groups which do not properly see the current Ethiopia in the perspective. Maybe they see the old Ethiopia and they try to manipulate and bring about the old Ethiopia into the current picture, which is completely wrong. The new Ethiopia is working very hard to see that we can either swim or sink together. There is no Somalia growing alone. There is no Ethiopia prospering alone. If we don't work very closely together, and if we don't lift up our people out of poverty together, then none of us can thrive. So I think we believe that this is very much intertwined region and community, and our contribution, our progressive agenda will continue for the future as well.
Yeah, before we wrap up this press conference, we would like to give an opportunity to one journalist. Can you give this gentleman?
Yes, my name is Ali Abdullahi from Somali National TV. So I want to ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, this
is with the last question. We have been engaging with the Somali regional governments upon the permission of the previous federal government. So we are not doing this directly. Whenever there is a need for any kind of support and negotiation, we always inform the federal government with the permission of the federal government of Somalia. Then they come to Addis and they work. We have very close relationship with all Somali leadership. We have no separation and division within the Somali leadership. You know, we follow same suit. As I said, the federal government is the sole responsible organ for foreign diplomacy and foreign policy. So without the permission and consent of the federal government of Somalia, Ethiopia and none other country should interfere into the sovereignty and integrity of the Somali national state. So I think this, we are very much clear about it. We are ourselves a federal government. Myself, I will not allow any country to directly involve with my regional governments without my consent. So I think the same applies to the Somali nation. And we will be very clean and we are principle based. The whole intention is to support the Somali people and the Somali government to make peace and stability and ultimately fight poverty and bring prosperity to the people of Somalia. That's the whole objective. We have no other motive and intention. So we want to continue with our fast economic growth and democratization in this country. If we need to do so, then we cannot leave others in a chaos without being supported, because that chaos will come back to us. And the spillover effect affects our fast economic growth. So it is for our benefit we are doing that, not only as a charity for Somali people. We are intertwined and we cannot thrive without each other. So if you take an example of the Northeast Asian countries, none of them left behind. All of them were lifted up together. So we cannot leave some of us left behind. That's why our policy is to work closely with the federal government of Somalia. That's why at the beginning I said foreign policy is the sole responsibility of the federal government of Somalia, as is also the national defense issue is also the sole responsibility of the Somali federal government. So that's why we have signed an agreement with the former Somali government on defense pact, which clearly shows that we are very conscious of the sensitivity of this issue. But we can also share our lessons. In Falling and Rising, we have learned about how federalism works. And if the Somali people opted for federalism, then they can learn, but they cannot copy, because the Somali is a unique arrangement. But there are principles that can be learned from Ethiopia and elsewhere where federalism has been working. So I think this is the first issue. And the second issue is, in London conference, as a leader of IGAD or as a chair of IGAD, I have the responsibility to represent IGAD as a regional bloc. In this regard, the first thing is there should not be many cooks. There should be coordinated support to Somalia. Until now, the support of the international community to Somalia has not been as successful as it is, because there are a number of hands getting in there without being coordinated. So this is an opportunity for all the international communities acting together, speaking with one voice for a coordinated support to the Somali government and its people. So I think that's the first thing that we have to achieve. The second thing is Somalia needs peace and stability, and of course there is contribution by the international community, but there should be a prescribed period of time where Al-Shabaab should be eliminated and the Somali Defense National Force be established. So I think this is the first agenda item that should be discussed and agreed upon. The second issue is recovering and reconstructing Somalia. Somalis themselves are not able to do so by themselves at this time. They need support. major countries, even Europeans, after being destroyed, being supported by other Western countries to take off. This is high time for Somalia to be supported, like the Marshall Plan. That has to be there for Somalia to take off. This is high time. And the third issue is humanitarian aspect. You know, now there is humanitarian catastrophe in Somalia, and we believe that this is, even though it's a temporary problem, as I said, but should be supported as quickly as possible. So I think these are the three major issues, but the partnership issue, lastly, is very important, and we should have a coordinated partnership being demonstrated.